Um, I wanted to make this video because I've just, over the last 24 or so hours, just had a lot on my mind. And I just feel like I have to make this video. I really want to anyways, so it makes sense. The world is not great right now. There's just a lot happening at once, and it's not wonderful. I wish that if it was a lot happening at once, it could just be good things, not horrible things, but no. Our world is just, right now it's a new thing every day happening that's just making us more and more numb as the days pass on. I wanted to make this video. I didn't really sleep good last night. I was constantly just waking up and couldn't fall back asleep at times, and it's not easy. But I'm getting off topic already. I feel like I should just put a disclaimer. I'm not very good at expressing emotions properly, or not expressing my emotions, but expressing my emotions through words. So I feel like if I make a video, maybe I could do it a little easier than typing. So yeah, I want to kind of focus on the recent events, specifically the recent passing of actress Naya Rivera. If you don't know who she is, she was in the popular show Glee, which aired for about 6 years, I think. Yeah, about roughly 6 years, give or take a few months. And just like the circumstances of it all, when it's happening, which is now, which is everything's happening all at once. I don't really want to get too much into it, but I kind of want to explain a lot of things. Kind of my thoughts on everything. I don't know how to explain what I want to talk about. So I think the first thing I want to just talk about is that you have every right to be sad or upset or angry or in denial. You are allowed to grieve. And there are people who are going to tell you, oh, well, you didn't know her, you weren't friends with her, you weren't family, you don't get to be sad. That's not true. You have every right to be sad, to be upset, to be hurt, and no one can take that from you. And there are people who will say that and think, oh, you can't be sad, and, you're stupid, you can't have these kind of feelings. Not with Naya's death, but with another celebrity. A friend of his went into an interview, some people may know what I'm talking about, and was literally, and this isn't exactly what he said word for word, but I'm kind of paraphrasing what I remember seeing. It was something like, oh, they didn't know him, they can't be sad. But it's you don't know what kind of impact that person may have had on their life. You don't know that person. So that's kind of just that. Nonetheless, this is definitely going to be a difficult death to cope with, specifically for, I'd say everyone, really, because, she was still relevant. She was still, I don't really know if she was still acting or not, I have to check, but she was still very relevant. Glee is still a very popular show, even though it hasn't been on the air for 5 years now? Yeah, 5 years. And it's just also the circumstances of what happened. Not that even if those weren't the circumstances, it wouldn't be sad, because it would. But just when you put all that together, plus add on top everything going on right now in the world, it's just a whole thing of just bad. But I feel like, in my opinion, this death is very much going to affect millennials, maybe kind of older Gen Z, and hell, even Gen Alpha, to be honest. Like I said, due to the circumstances. So I think, but don't get it twisted. That's not to say that other, generations, older and younger, will not feel the effects, because they might. They can, and they will. Um, Sorry, my cat is like over there. um, I think for millennials and Gen Z, and really just any Glee fan, obviously it's very upsetting. Um, I wouldn't call myself like an avid fan. Like, I didn't sit down and like watch every single episode. Um, but I definitely grew up around the show. I grew up with it being very popular. I would watch it when sometimes if it was on. Um, and I also remember listening to like the songs all the time. My brother had on like his iPod, he would have like some of the songs and I would listen to them. And so did a lot of people. Um, but I think, obviously because and for some people that show was huge. It was not like a small show or anything. It was a very big popular show. So having kind of like a main person from it pass away pretty young anyways, um, is very, very kind of difficult to cope with. Um, and on top of that, this news came yesterday, which was the 7th anniversary of Corey's death, um, which, again, in itself is very upsetting. And I know there was a lot of people suffering with his passing and are still suffering with his passing, and coping with it. But I think something I kind of want to point out is that, where was I going with that sentence? I'm sorry, sometimes I lose track of what I'm saying. But I think, especially those who grew up around the show, watching it, they are going to be like, wow, that's insane. Now, a reason I say that Gen Alpha, so if you don't know, Gen Alpha is, well, there's multiple, like, different things, but not all of Gen Alpha has even been born yet, because technically it goes from, I believe, 2010 or 2011 till, I think, 2024? I could be wrong, but I think that's it. But for young kids, basically, is what I'm trying to say. This is going to potentially affect them. Because unlike, like, even when I was little, I did not have as much access to the news, to the current news. Because, for one, social media was not as big as it is now. It was big, but, not a lot of little kids were, like, on it, if you get what I mean. On top of that, I really didn't watch the news or anything, unless my mom was watching, and even then I barely knew what was going on. But now kids are all over social media, whether it be their parents' accounts or their accounts, or whatever. But just because mostly of the circumstances of this death, it's going to affect them. This may scare them, thinking, if for those who don't know what had happened, Naya was with her 4-year-old son when this happened, and essentially what had happened, from what I've heard, was she had lifted him back up onto the boat, and when he turned around, she was gone. So I think for some kids who might hear that, they may get scared. They may be petrified. They may think that can happen to them. And this can hurt them, emotionally. And that's kind of all there is to say about that. I mean, it's hard. I think another thing I want to sort of just talk about is that, death is inevitable. It's gonna happen to everybody. No matter how big of a person, celebrity you are, or small, doesn't matter. Like, death is the only thing we are guaranteed in life. And, with that, everyone's gonna pass away. I'm not ready for it. I'm not very good with handling death. As I know many people aren't. But I'm not very good at it. I'm very, how would you say, like, I'm just not good with it. But as we get older, there's it's going to happen more. And, hopefully our favorite people, we want them to live long lives. In some cases, I'm like, I hope I can outlive them. I hope they can outlive me. I'm sorry. Just flip it around. I hope they can outlive me, because I'm not ready to see the day where certain people that I love pass away. I'm simply not ready for it. I can have 100 years in advance, I still wouldn't be ready for it. But it's just difficult, And I think the reason that this death, and also I think an important one would be the death of Cameron Boyce, which was a year ago, a year and a few days ago, is because these are kind of beginning to be the first major deaths that specifically Gen Z will experience. There's going to be a ton. They're going to happen, hopefully not for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, long time. But unfortunately, they will happen. And that's the funny thing, it's like, in the past, I've, seen these random celebrities that my parents grew up with, and them pass away. And they're all, many of them are very old or sick. But it still can be upsetting, where it's like, man, this person, I grew up with, watching, listening to, whatever it might be, and suddenly they're just gone. That's a difficult thing, obviously. But it's like, when you're little, you're like, oh, I don't know who that is, I don't care. But, now, that's happening, where, of course, not right now, it's not like every single day, thank God. But eventually, it's going to be very similar, where we're going to have to see in the news, the headlines, oh, this person's passed away, and that's difficult. That's hard to, when you think about it, because we don't think about that every day, but when these kind of things happen, that's kind of where, at least for me, that's where my mind goes to. That's why I'm, thinking about that. I'm like, one day I'm going to have to see all these different headlines, and I'm not ready for it. And like I said, I hope this, doesn't happen for 40, 50, 60 years, however long, as I would hate for it to happen now. That would be very tragic. Especially because most of the people that I'm into are very, very young. Most are under 30, or, usually mostly not older than 50, or 40, I don't know. But that's kind of a difficult thing, YouTubers, celebrities, movie stars, actresses, musicians, one day, and there isn't anything we can really do about it. But it's hard. It's definitely hard, and especially because right now Gen Z is between, I think, there's different, numbers, but from what I know, Gen Z is about 97 to 2010-ish, so we're all between about 24 to about 10 years old, so 10 to about 24 years old, roughly. And so, the older of the group, but even then, it's still, they're still gonna be sad, and we're still so young, so it's like, you don't expect these people to be dying, especially people that you grew up with, which kind of, again, brings me back to Cameron. Not only was he still active in acting, he had Descendants 3 coming out a month after, and kids love Descendants, trust me, I know. That kids just love that movie, and so even Gen Alpha, that's kind of their first major death too, which is sad, because most of Gen Alpha is very, very young. Most of Gen Alpha is under the age of 10, so the fact that they've had to deal with that already is pretty crazy. And just kind of having to explain that to a child, I can't really imagine, having explained that to a child so young, I can't really imagine. Nonetheless, though, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of these are sort of the first major deaths that we're going to have to experience. So, we've never had this. Maybe some of us have had a parent, or maybe not parent, but, well, parent, yeah, a family member is what I meant to say. A family member, or a pet, or a friend even maybe pass away. And that's, that's hard, but which is very hard. However, what I mean is kind of just as a whole generation, we all, this kind of happens, just everything's on pause. Everyone's just silent. Everyone's like, but like how? Like what? That can't be. Especially with Cameron, he was very young. He was still very relevant. And as a generation, we all collectively grew up watching him, whether it have been, on Disney or in the movies he was in or whatever it might have been. We all grew up with him. Not all, but the majority, I would say, actually. Or maybe not majority, I don't know. But a vast group of us, maybe that's what I'm looking for, I don't know. We all kind of grew up with him, and so like I said, it's kind of the first major event like that to happen in our lives. For some of us it's happened before, but for, like I said, it's kind of the first really big one that a lot of the generation could relate to. It could kind of be like, wow, this is not good. I don't like this. And the fact that the matter is that we're still young, and like Gen Z, like I said, is between about 10 and 24. So we're at the age where, we know what death is. We can, to some extent, understand it. But for many of us, it hasn't, that hadn't really happened yet. We hadn't really experienced grief yet for some of us. Or we haven't experienced losing someone like that. If you kind of get what I'm trying to say here. So it's not easy. We do have each other though, like us, because we're all relating, we're all sad, we're all, kind of experiencing these emotions together. And then I think the next thing I want to say, which kind of bases on that, is that everyone grieves differently. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. Everyone feels different emotions. Some people right now are in denial. Some people think, no, maybe she's still out there, even though it's been confirmed. Or, some people are angry, thinking, or some people are just sad. Some people are depressed. Some people are just numb. Some people are emotionless. They can't, and some people just don't know what to think. And so that's a major thing we have to think about, is that everyone grieves differently. So just because someone doesn't grieve the same way you do, maybe, there's no reason to call them out on that. Or say, oh, you can't be thinking this, or, I've seen, maybe some people are posting, good memories, saying, like, posting, maybe clips from the show, and that can be saddening, but maybe that's their way of coping, is thinking about the good things that have happened. Why am I tearing up? I think that's kind of all I have to say. That's kind of all I can think of right now to say. If you can, just share this video. I kind of want people to kind of see this and understand kind of what I'm thinking about. This is kind of just my, word vomit, just, getting kind of everything I want to say out, instead of just pacing around my room like I always do. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to post this and kind of get my feelings, get my thoughts out there. So yeah.